It's the conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
The intro that is way too cool for me.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the
Said that in
conversation.
a while.
Harold and Dave. I am Keone, and we have Dave here. Harold may pop in. He's a little tied up right now. We're going to start with a segment we haven't done in a while, Dave, where I just randomly go, Dave, what the fuck?
Come at me, bro. I got a
Troops
little of
being.
my drink left.
Well, first, let's start off. You and I are both Army vets, and I know this happened a couple weeks ago, and you and I talked on the phone. We weren't doing a show. But Trump assembling 800 generals from around the world, out of theaters and around the country in important places, to give a bit of a pep rally that didn't work. A lot of people were confused on the MAGA side of why would we feel that that's an insult. And I was seeing comments like, well, those lazy generals need to do their jobs, and that's what he needs done.
Lazy generals? What the hell? No, we talked about this, and I said there were three things that happened that were going on with those generals there. One, they get called in by Pete Hegseth, who is achieved the rank of major in the National Guard, and has never run anything above a company-sized unit. I'm not even sure he was ever selected for company command, but he's not anybody with any credibility who then stands up there and cosplays as Patton, lectures them on stuff that he just doesn't even understand how inappropriate it is. He's somebody. I can't take credit for this comment. Somebody said this is like the stuff your sergeant major says to the NCOs after he holds them back from formation, right? Bitches about everyone not being fit, not wearing their uniforms right. And while that has a time honored and important role in the military, the Secretary of Defense, because that's what he's actually called, Congress hasn't changed the name. The SecDef is not the guy to do it. I mean, he's not in the military. He is a civilian. You do not lecture the military when you're a civilian, because you and I are vets, but we're civilians now, right? We're not in it anymore. So there's that level. But then Trump comes in. It says all this wildly political stuff, never understanding that these guys have a legal requirement not to engage in politics and not to get involved in any of this stuff. And he comes in and starts trying to talk to them about a war with the American public, the people that they're supposed to defend. And he's saying all these things that are just red flags for these guys are like, holy shit, illegal orders are coming our way, and we're going to have to decide what to do about it, and it's not going to end well, right? Also, they're looking at just the way he's politicizing the military. This is an existential threat to the military, make no mistake. Not in the sense the military will go away, but it's standing with the American public and society, which the military depends on. The military must have that connection. It must be supported. This is something we learned in Vietnam. We can't burn that down. And he's threatening all that. So he's threatening the institution and doing all these wildly inappropriate things. All of this with a backdrop of these yo-hos are coming up with a national defense strategy that most of the generals in that room don't agree with. There's this huge fight in the Pentagon, or this big disagreement about where our priorities should be. Should we be resisting China? Should we be supporting our allies? That's what the generals think. The generals think the world is a dangerous place and we need to protect America from it. Trump thinks Portland, right? This enemy within, right? And Hegseth is producing a national defense strategy that these guys think is going to make America weak. So on three dimensions, you have, insulted, threatened, and worried these guys. What a frickin' meeting that was. And oh, by the way, if ever there was a meeting that could have been an email. What do you, there we go.
I just love the when Hegseth would say something and he thought he stopped the landing and was waiting for applause with that awkward pause, and there would be no applause. He did the same thing at the 250th anniversary of the Navy, where he sat in front of, and God bless that soldier. I don't know if she had to go to the bathroom, but the optics, when he said Barack Hussein Obama, if you go watch the video again, there's one black female sailor in that scene, and she literally pushes through and walks all the way down, shaking her head, and she leaves.
The guy's name was Suzanne. I mean, really. Um, Hegseth, just his problem is he can't conceive of anything but this concept of being in the military and wanting to be a toxic. I mean, he defines toxic masculinity, right? If you didn't believe toxic masculinity existed, Exhibit A,
Well,
Pete
Dave,
Hegseth.
do you think? Because I just thought about it, where he ended up his career in the military. Now he's in a room getting to talk down the generals that he would never be able to do during his military tenure.
No, well, like I say, he's basically a National Guard major, and people who make major don't have to have the learning experiences. They haven't made those cuts to battalion command to become a colonel, to be battalion command, brigade command. These generals have cleared several hurdles, and he can't conceive of the nuances that these guys have learned, right? They might have been all gung ho and like this stuff is bullshit. We got to worry about social experiments in our military, and I mean, they might have been that way younger, but as they've gone on, they have been they care about the troops. This is the thing. He doesn't care about the troops. He wants the troops to be some image, and he's willing to talk about them being fat, being, he doesn't care, right? He talks about a fat troop. You see a fat soldier, a chubby soldier, that soldier is hurt. That soldier has had something happen to them. They maybe were injured. And I mean, they're probably more likely than not that's the case. And they're probably been on profile. And the thing is that if you see a soldier who's having trouble with their weight, you don't get rid of them, right? You don't get rid of them. You help them because they embody training, experience, and you ask why, you haven't been heavy before, why are you heavy now? And a lot of times it's because they have a medical problem, and they're off training, or suddenly their lifestyle's
I
shifted.
have a question, Dave.
Yeah,
Does he mean these Texas National Guard troops that he deployed to Illinois right here? This size?
I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
that's a recent picture. Those are troops from Texas that landed. Which brings me to another thing. Isn't Texas the state that doesn't want other people interfering in their business?
I can't. I can't say what Texas wants. It's I don't even want to go there.
Well, I mean,
But I think you're right. Like, what about states' rights, right? What
this is
about
the
that?
thing that I was talking about because
Yeah.
the president has circumvented a federal judge's ruling that he appointed And there lies another problem. He appointed the federal judge that denied sending troops to Portland. And when asked about it, Trump said that judge isn't serving me. The judge is not there to serve you, Trump, even though you appointed them.
No, yeah, he cannot conceive of, and I think this goes back to what I think all of those generals are going to have a problem with. He cannot conceive of constitutional government, the very thing that those 800 people swore to defend, spent their life defending, and have thought about at different times in different ways over their career. They probably have developed feelings, developed not feelings, thoughts on the process. Because, by the way, as I mentioned when we talked about this before, when he talked to those 800 generals, that's probably the highest educated group, right? That was probably the most educated audience he or Pete Hegseth have ever addressed. They have at least, everyone in that room had at least a master's degree, many of them two master's degrees, many of them PhDs. And, these folks are nuanced thinkers. And, but he
Well,
doesn't get that, and Trump doesn't get that.
Dave, not to mention the 19 plus other programs and schoolings that you've had. I mean, you look at a general's chest, you see all types of things from Pathfinder to air assault to special forces, to some of them are special forces and rangers. It's like war colleges. It's endless, the amount of schooling that they have to go to. And what some people don't understand is when you go through schooling in the military, everything that you learn is condensed. Condensed not meaning that it's made less, it's meaning that you're learning more in a shorter time frame. It's being crammed into you, and you still have to pass. And they don't just pass you. You fail out. How many times did you, when you were in, were guys going to schools and coming back with their head down because they failed? They don't just pass you.
Well, I was in the field artillery, so yeah, we had to work on it. Don't talk to me about tankers, but couldn't resist it. But no, I mean, there was a lot. There was a lot you had to do, and you had, these guys have really, they are the product of an institution that found itself cowed by the PhDs that McNamara brought in, that found itself in the Vietnam War, um, overawed by people with civilian educations. And they went back and they said, no, never again. And they changed the system, and they insisted that officers go through a process of, of development, and both, and civilian education. I mean, that's the thing is because you can't just be a soldier. You need to be more cosmopolitan. You need to have experiences with other folks if you're going to interact with the world beyond just what you're doing. Because and so these guys are extremely, I just remember this has been the case for a while. When I was in college, one of my professors went and interacted. He went on something, and this is the 80s, right? When people still have a lot of prejudice against the military from Vietnam. And he came back and said to me, he was a political scientist. I was in the major, but I was like the only ROTC guy at my campus. So I'm like got the short hair, and, and he's like, David, I can't believe I have never talked to such a group of people. I found them, they just blew me away. He was just like so amazed. And that was the 80s, right? And we build on that. And so Hegseth and Trump cannot conceive of this. They cannot think like this. They do not think like this. They don't have a nuanced view of the world. They are not educated about differing viewpoints. And I think with Hegseth, what originally got me on this thing, he can't conceive of a different point of view. And he expected all of those guys to see the world the way he did, and to see the problems with the military as being that they put up with dudes in dresses, And he's talking to these guys like he's talking to a company of people, of young people, and he's doing this whole motivational thing, and these are serious thinkers, and so he just couldn't understand that they don't see it that way. And I think that's why you saw those huge, and he didn't understand that the entire time he is insulting them. This is what I couldn't believe. You're telling these guys that all their soldiers are fat, right? That the military is too woke and has failed. These are the guys who've been running the military for the last 20 years. And you're telling them that they screwed up, and they're probably thinking, "Well, no, I don't know what you're talking about. My guys are perfectly fine. Yeah, we have a few people, we're working with them." But
Like I
I
told you, I had a soldier that gained 80 pounds because he had two knee replacements. But once he was all good, he got it all down. One of the problems is the ice facility in Portland that was burning to the ground. They were getting maybe an average of 17 to 25 protesters a day, and now that troops are there, that has increased dramatically. We've got video of the mayor of Chicago standing out in the street and watching people get snatched out of cars, and him pleading with other people to just get in their car and walk away because what can he do?
I think I think that the court rulings in Chicago. I mean, they're bringing those pictures you showed of the National Guardsmen. They're showing up in Chicago. I don't think there's a court injunction against him there. There's one in Portland, and so far, while ICE is there, they haven't. I haven't seen National Guard, so he hasn't necessarily violated the court order there. In Chicago, we don't have an equivalent court order yet. And it seems likely that, we're getting courts go off a precedent. And, we've got a lot of rulings that are coming out. And so I would expect that there will be an order against him in Chicago, preventing
Yeah,
him from doing it.
why is he deploying Texas National Guard if the border is such a crisis and not using Illinois National Guard?
Right. Well, obviously, he thinks that these people are loyal and that they will go in and they will be that hostile occupying force. And maybe they will. Maybe the guys from Texas are going to be less, or maybe the guys from Texas are heavily Hispanic because Texas is heavily Hispanic.
Well,
uh,
I
you know,
also I also think you don't want to use the troops that live in the state.
right.
You might be more
There's that.
sympathetic. There's
Um,
that aspect.
I liked what the Portland or the Oregon, not Portland, the Oregon general from I don't know if it was the tag, the adjutant general, or well, they were asking him questions about possible deployments of the Oregon National Guard. And it's like, if we're deployed, our mission is to protect the citizens of Portland, so we'll protect the protesters. And, I think a force that would go in and be like, no, we're here to protect the protesters, and we're going to keep peace, right? We're not here to be vindictive. That might have room, so I almost wonder, hey, maybe you should be calling out your own National Guard to, but you'd have to work it so they're not at war with your people. But the military not being at war with the people. I mean, the war within is just the most chilling, frightening thing an American officer can hear. Right, when you start raising that, when Trump was saying that to these guys, these generals, and he's talking about it, this is no. I mean, no, this is not acceptable. This is not what you signed up for. This is not what your constitutional duty is. And in fact, you have a constitutional duty to prevent this from happening. And officers do not take an oath to follow the orders of the president and officers appointed above them. Officers take an oath that says that they are going to defend the Constitution. There's a reason they wrote the oath that way, right? The enlisted guys, okay, you guys just, you're going to follow orders. Okay. So just, you do that. The officers are entrusted with a higher level of responsibility, which includes the implicit task to identify, what is a lawful order and what isn't. And
Yeah,
no
because
one
you
is happy.
refused an unlawful order. One of the scary things he said in that meeting also is, and we're going to do away with the stupid rules of engagement.
And, lower level, people who are out in the field hate those. Right. And but at the same time, there is an understanding. And I do believe that in a lot of cases, the so quote unquote lower level, the operators in our military, because our enlisted people are freaking smart. Okay. They are very high quality people as well. You've got to have at least a high school diploma to be in the military. A lot of our enlisted people have college. Our military just every year gets smarter and smarter and more educated. And a lot of folks in the counterinsurgencies that we engaged in Iraq and Afghanistan recognize that you do not go into town shooting up everybody, that you take a knee very often. And, uh, and they don't go running around, busting up stuff. And so the rules of engagement piss everyone off, but they're very important for maintaining control and giving guidance. And the the generals in that room understood that, right? They
Yeah,
understood
because
that.
Dave, we have people that'll do stupid stuff with the rules of engagement. Imagine just taking it off. I mean, we've seen, in Afghanistan, we've seen what the Marines did. Not the Marines, but those Marines that, urinated on dead bodies. You saw what happened at the prison. So you're going to have people that don't do the right
Oh,
thing.
the E4s that lost the war.
Yeah, but
Let's
if you,
not forget Abu Ghraib, right? They
mhm,
were like the
yep,
poster child. They were known as the E4s that lost the war because these idiots who are just basically who had no reason. Like if I'm taking rounds and I want to shoot back at someone, the rules of engagement tell me I can't shoot back at, and I shoot, I'm taking rounds. It's a life or death thing. You're bored. You're bored on the night shift, so you decide to screw with the prisoners. That's just being a douchebag, right? And but I mean, these guys understand that this, if you take the broader mission into account, you have to, you can't do that stuff. I'm sorry, you were saying, I didn't mean to jump on you.
you're fine. You're going into what I was talking about. Just that's scary when you're talking about we're just going to throw away the rules of engagement. I think people don't understand the damage that we have repaired since Vietnam in terms of how civilians treat soldiers and how soldiers were treating soldiers in Vietnam. Vietnam was a high fratricide war. It was a very, very high fratricide war. Now, that leads me to this. You've got National Guard that you've activated and taken away from their regular jobs because just like the reserves, it's 2 week, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. You taking them away from their everyday job, which is their livelihood, and they're working without pay right now.
They're working without pay.
They're
How are
working
they
without.
not getting paid? Yeah, that's again, if you're a competent military leader, no, no, your guys aren't working without pay. You would never do that to your people. Your people are your problem. Your people are your concern. And any leader worth their salt, right? I mean, to a fault, our leaders will protect our military leaders will protect their soldiers almost to a fault, almost maybe to a fault, and I wouldn't fault them. The thing is that this idea of if they haven't dotted the i's and done the paperwork, and they're deploying people without pay, I mean that's any military officer they'd lose their command. They'd be the IG would be on their ass so fast to make their heads spin.
Well, we can always get back pay. They say. Speaking of back pay, Donald Trump was asked about the 7 days of government shutdown, which of course a lot of Republicans are saying. I mean, you know how it gets in a news cycle and they repeat the same thing all day long. So it keeps saying, well, it's a Democrat shutdown. It's a Democrat shutdown. It's a Democrat party is the reason why we're shut down. So he was asked, well, will these employees be receiving back pay? And his answer stunned the crowd because he said, well, some of them. A lot of them will, but we'll decide who will, and some of them don't deserve it. What?
There is a law. There's a law for this. And if you don't pay them, they will sue you and they will get their money eventually.
Yeah,
Class action lawsuits will come out. But
we're talking
it's
someone who sued the government, but of course, unlike civilian places, the government has a cap on how much you can sue them for, which is very annoying.
right. But I mean, the thing is that again, it's treating people like they're the problem. And it's you know, yeah, this is not the military, this is civilians, but you know, it is just it's bullshit. But yeah, of course the military's not getting paid because now they're not getting paid, no one's getting paid. They're gonna get it on the back end, but um on the back end, not up. Anyway, the thing is that when we look at this shutdown, Republicans are saying it's a you know they go beyond saying it's a one, they're losing that battle rapidly, but they're also trying to promote the lie, and we have to call it a lie, that Democrats are doing this because they want to protect health care for illegal immigrants. And that is not why Democrats are doing it. At that level, their motivation, they're mischaracterizing the motivation. The motivation of Democrats is beyond wanting to win something for a change and finally growing an effing spine to do something. They don't want the healthcare premiums going up because they have this massive problem that healthcare premiums are going to increase for people. But the only truth that illegal immigrants, undocumented, are not eligible for health care. So at that level, it's simply not possible for this to be the case. The only time that illegal immigrants would get health care is if they showed up at an emergency room with an emergent situation, trouble breathing, gunshot, in a car accident. And all emergency rooms will take care of people in that
Dave,
situation and
I
then
think
worry
that's
about it later.
where the Americans that fall for this don't understand the difference. There's a difference between an immigrant being detained and falling down and cutting their arm open and they have to be tended to, than some legal immigrant just walking in and getting their teeth fixed and just going to a general doctor.
Right. And so they're out and out lying, but at the same time, what's so stupid to me about this strategy, one, yeah, they're lying, but they are drawing attention to healthcare, right? So they're bringing up healthcare. They're putting healthcare out there for everyone. And people are starting to recognize that, yeah, you guys did cut in the big, beautiful bill, you cut subsidies. And in fact, a lot of people are waking up to the realization that their premiums are going to go up. And Mike Johnson, when talking about it, they can't deny it. Even the Republicans, even these MAGA guys can't deny that
Oh,
this is a
Dave,
huge
don't get me
problem.
started because I had to agree with Margie Taylor Greene twice in a
Yes,
month and I almost want to die.
that believe me, a lot of people are having that problem. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is salvaging her you know, I was like waiting for Georgia to kick her to the curb, and I'm not sure that's going to happen now. But she is. I don't know. I'm not a fan, but I recognize when a politician makes a smart move. And the thing though is that you know the people that need the ACA are in these red states, right? In blue states, people make more money, have their own private insurance, more employers provide health care, there are more unions, so in it's the people that need the 75% of these folks are in red states. And these guys are putting people on the hunt that it's the healthcare, and they have to admit that, hey, this is a problem. And so now they're going to go and they're falling back on, but we don't think we should be dealing with that now. We should get the government going and then negotiate about it later. And I'm like, oh yes, the old process argument that always works so well with voters. And so for the one time, how many times does Harold talk about the Democrats being bad at messaging, right? Here,
A
the
lot.
messaging is the Republicans are doing what Democrats would normally do, make this idea of like, let's talk about the process, and voters like, process. Our premiums are going up. What are you going to do about it? Apparently nothing. So this is such a losing issue, and it's only going to get worse as this goes on. And as we get close to those dates when the premiums go up, that's the thing that's also working against them. As they get closer to the date that the subsidies run out, more and more people are going to be looking at renewing and becoming aware that, holy shit, our premiums are going to go up. If you thought people were pissed at Biden for 6% inflation, having their healthcare costs go up 300%, 200%. Yeah, that ain't, so yeah, there's
Well,
that's the shit.
he'll just blame Biden for that. Um, let's talk about Canada for a second. President met with the Prime Minister of Canada again. One of the things he said was he's going to raise those tariffs 35% because Canada needs to stop the meth from flooding into America, flooding in. Reports from both borders, all meth collected from both borders and anywhere along the coast, Canada accounted for 0.02% of it.
I can't believe that we don't send more meth to Canada than they send to us. I mean, in what universe is the flow coming south from Canada? I mean,
I was
seriously.
going to say that. I guarantee you, Canada's meth problem comes from us.
I'm just saying it's I didn't even know he's still on about that. I was looking at the news on this topic, um and
You got to look at the Prime Minister's face when Trump is like everyone who sits in that chair across while he's talking, they just look miserable.
in front of the
Everybody
gold, there's
besides
always more gold, right? Like we'll probably always be able to date photos from this year of the Trump administration, Oval
Putin was
Office
the
photos,
only
by how much
person.
bullshit gold is behind them.
Putin was. I'm going to get a collection of pictures for the next show. Putin was the only person that did not look miserable, just sitting there listening to him talk.
Well, I mean, he's, it's yeah. I don't want to get too, because it's really, he's an old man with poopy pants and dementia, and so at this point, even though he's doing tremendous damage, I'm increasingly shifting my ire to the people who are enabling him. I don't know if that's a good point of view, but I mean, seriously, uh, they're enabling his worst instincts, and and Canada's just now they're talking one thing about Canada. Canada has removed a lot of the retaliation, right? Our story was with Canada, oh, they're resisting, they're not buying our stuff, and they were all putting up a fight. They've actually rolled over, right? I mean, no one has said this, but they've removed a lot of their the retaliatory tariffs to appease Trump, presumably. They have very few left. They have them mainly on industrial products, right? But and so
Doesn't help the people that got laid off from the companies that were hurting because of the
right.
retaliation. No,
And the thing is though, so they've made concessions. The biggest thing is that Trump is now going to put that coming up soon, like I think October 14th was what I saw. We're gonna have we're gonna tariff Canadian timber, right? The softwood products and all that stuff. And that's really gonna hurt them, right? So we're really gonna jack up some stuff. I mean, it's stupid. We're already hurting the people that are supposed to be our partners, right? We had a plan, NAFTA. Well, before NAFTA, Reagan created the Canada US Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA was an expansion of that. That had worked so well, Mexico wanted a peace of the action. So NAFTA was an expansion. But Ronald Reagan started the ball rolling on the Canada US Free Trade Agreement. We were already heavily integrated with the Canadian economy. We became more integrated. And Trump came in and said, "Oh, I don't like NAFTA." So he created the USMCA, right? Which sounds like a military academy, but all right. And so he negotiated this deal. And all right, that was fine. You wanted to, we could be, it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't, what he did wasn't that bad. But okay, we preserve the working relationship, and the whole idea of this thing. It's a big world, and we're not shrinking as a nation, but the rest of the world's getting bigger. The rest of the economies are getting bigger. So we need partners. We need a team up, right? In order to, when the supervillains get bigger, you got to team up with your. And so I don't know. I don't want to go DC with this, but we need Green Lantern to come in. And so Canada, right? Mexico, we're all together. We're getting specialization. And now he's screwing it. And if ever there was a country you should not screw over, it's Canada. If ever there was a country that was not screwing us over, it's Canada. The softwoods, right? He's
Well,
tariff on softwoods. And I'll just one last thought on this.
okay, go ahead.
And it's like, oh, we're going to protect the American forestry industry. The materials we use to make studs and rafters and to build houses with overwhelmingly comes from Canada. They have like our supply. Yes, we have some timber. Our supply compared to theirs, theirs dwarfs ours. So the thing is that they have it in abundance, we not so much. And it's not a trade. This is a thing of like, hey, they've got it, we don't. It makes sense to buy it from them. It's not like we're losing jobs in the US because of that, because we just don't have that much lumber in here. Because the type of tree that we like to use in our construction, it's insane. They have so much of it up there. And this is really going to hurt us. It's going to hurt the home building industry. It's going to hurt everything that uses lumber in the United States. All right, landing the plane.
I was gonna say, looking at the effects. I know last time you and I we had a little chat about the Arkansas farmers. Let's just take one of the products, soybeans, which they're having a problem with right now. China bought large quantities of soybeans from us.
In the past.
China's, yeah, and they were supposed to again. Argentina and Brazil are the direct competitors in soybeans for us. Well, our lovely government and commander in chief bailed out the Argentinian farmers, and now China's buying the soybeans from Argentina and Brazil, and they're buying none from us.
And that, I was looking at some stuff, and apparently still, and the soybean farmers are like, the F is going on here. They're putting their soybeans into storage because they just don't have a market for it. And one of these guys in Illinois, I saw him being interviewed. One of these farmers is like, look, if we don't solve this problem quickly, that market will go away, because once China starts buying from somebody else, they'll keep buying from somebody else. And that guy, again, showing that farmers are another group of people who are very smart, right? When it comes to their business, and they become, tractor driving hedge fund managers, right? They those guys understand this. And I have, from studying tariffs, that's exactly right. Right. That once a trade pattern shifts, it's very sticky. and it doesn't want to go back because there are costs associated with changing. And so, we're watching our farmers lose out on, China's not the most populous nation anymore, but there's a lot of people there. They need a lot of soybeans. And, it's just the dumbest thing. And what's really dumb is this happened before. It happened before that we had to pay the farmers. Last time we had a trade war with Canada, I mean, with China, something like 90 some odd percent of the tariff revenue that we got from the trade war, we had to give in subsidies to farmers who were hurt by it. So there was no gain. And in fact, there were probably a lot of other damages to the society that weren't covered. This time around, China was ready for this. China had changed the market conditions changed. Their availability of alternative sources was greater, and I've seen some analysis that said that, look, last time the Chinese sort of had to keep going and they had to come back when it was over. This time, no, and it may be already too late, and it may be too late for these guys
Yeah,
because
well,
again,
now he's
China
working
may not come
on.
back.
Now he's working on. They're working on as the latest news I saw this morning. They're working on a bailout for the farmers, but like the farmers are saying, well, just throwing money at us now doesn't fix the long term problem. Yeah, I'll be able to pay my bills and feed my family and do all that, but if no one's buying my shit after the bailout, how does that help me?
Right. And it's Yellowstone, right? You don't have anyone to take over I saw one guy being interviewed and his son was there and his son's in his 20s and talking about, hey, will he take over the farm? And it's like, well, if I was to come back here and work on the farm, I'd have to get a second job because it's not going to pay. And so that whole legacy thing uh just ain't there. And I don't see how he comes back from this. I mean, it may not be too late yet. He may get. I just don't see Trump having a great deal of leverage with China. China seems to have very consciously moved in a direction to be unfettered, be untied to the United States. And, China is certainly not buttering Trump up. And, if China is seeing us as maneuvering to confronted over Taiwan, why would they buy food from us? Right? I mean, they'd probably want to buy food from another source, or they're going to want to diversify at the very least, but probably cut us out as much as possible. And so I don't see him making any deals with China. I think the only way they get it back is if they actually can make a deal with China where the Chinese government, to appease us, makes a move to go back and buy the soybeans. It could happen. But I just don't, there's all this bullshit talk of, oh, we're doing all these trade deals. And it's like, it all sounds like BS. Even with Canada, both, Trump and Carney, well, both like, oh, we had great productive talks. And I can't find a single hard fact that would support there being anything productive coming out of the meeting. Right. We had good talk, and it's like, all right. And the reporters are saying this. And there's even less evidence that anything's happening with China.
Something scrolled across the screen that I didn't even think about either. This thing with sending troops to different states, it's also starting something to happen that you didn't see. Governors are getting into fights with each other, verbal confrontations with each other. That didn't happen a lot that I know of. That why would the governor of Illinois or the governor of Portland be getting into a spat with the governor 5 states away? That's one thing. And then there's been I got
Low energy,
low energy.
low energy protests. You know? Did you see
Um,
the pictures of Kristi Noem standing on top of the building looking out like at the protesters? And you look out, there's no crowds out there. There's a
there's no
dude in a
crowds
chicken
out there.
suit.
I also saw the Illinois Army reservists not happy that the Texas National Guard are using their shit. they're building.
Well, no one's ever happy about someone in their house. And yeah, and I can't imagine the Texas National Guard is overly joyed to be there.
No, I can't believe they're Everly Jordan. It just annoys me every time I see this guy on TV and constantly repeating that Portland is burning to the ground. It infuriates me every time he says it. Portland is on fire.
What it war rap, I mean, we're it's scrolling beneath us. It's a war, and that's why I freaking love the Portland Frog, right? And I think that the folks in Portland have caught on to something. Inflatable costumes. Go to the protest. They had the dude who was at the ice facility, and he's in one of those inflatable frog things, right? And they have those things, like they had other people like a unicorn and dinosaurs and stuff. And of course, he's there. And at one point, one of the ice people sprayed pepper spray inside the air inlet, the place where the fan sucks the air in to keep the suit inflated. So, that looks like assault to me. But it also, just the optics of it are, it's a guy in a frog suit, dude. He's like a negative threat to you because he's in a clumsy suit that's inflated. It's like he's a beanbag, right? He can't hit you. He can't hold a weapon. He can just stand there and dance around in front of you. But also the thing is, the optics of it is, you can't say that these are terrorists, right? Terrorists don't wear Halloween costumes, not funny ones. And the it's right there in the word terror, but not these
Speaking
guys.
of, I love when you throw me a good segue. Speaking of a good segue, you said
Yeah.
terror and terrorists. Some funny things from the president's speech at the 250th anniversary for the Navy was in his book that he couldn't remember that he wrote because, of course, he didn't write it. A year before 9/11, he warned and brought the attention about this guy named Osama bin Laden. And he said, you better watch out for this guy, even though the CIA had been surveilling him since like the 80s. But of course, Trump takes credit for that.
Well, and it's not clear because he also, was saying his timelines are just crazy on all that, and who he's saying and what he's talking about. And um it's just, it is part of his dementia, right? Of his diminished abilities, that he
Now, Dave, you're going to get in
reconstruct.
trouble for that. You're going to get in trouble for that because he hasn't been clinically diagnosed by a doctor for
Yeah,
having
I'm not that
dementia.
kind of doctor. I don't have to worry about it. Right.
But
I know. I mean, I
can you
just,
imagine this though? Can you
people.
imagine?
I've seen people who study this. They say that one of the things you do is you reconstruct memories as you get older. And my personal experience is, I totally see that. I'm 61 ish, and it is getting interesting. But
Well,
I saw my father go through this.
the reason why I'm going to not say he has dementia is because I've seen him do this for 30 years. Claim things and rewrite histories and say things happened that the way they
Well,
didn't happen.
I think the thing though is that he's really got this, he remembers things and he puts things together to construct memories. Um, and so, that's just more of the same, right? And um, to claim credit, I mean, it's insulting to try to claim credit for Osama bin Laden. Um, and
Or
when
to suggest that 9/11 would have been presented if people listened to you a year
the-
ago.
you know
But
the CIA sent out a report: Osama bin Laden plans attack in the US before 9/11. And we remember, if you remember, Condoleezza Rice being grilled by Congress at one point, having to admit that this document came out. And yes, everyone was warned about him. That, did they know that these guys were going to orchestrate what they orchestrated? No. And it's always been an exercise in futility, I think, to Monday morning quarterback these things, right? And sure, in hindsight, there's always a lot of evidence. Could you, yes, we know Osama bin Laden wants to do something. could you have conceived of what he came up with, right? You were surprised. Why were you surprised? Because you were surprised. And so the thing is, though, that it's not like no one ever warned anyone, right? But again, it's Trump's grandiosity. The Ukrainian war, I think more egregious is the claim that the war in Ukraine would never have occurred if he had been there, right? Never would have happened. And it's, ridiculous.
I almost played an alarm like ridiculous. That's the word of the next 4 years, but
Will it be 4 years?
I mean, well, less than that. Um, we're in year one. Geez, we're in year one, and it's felt like 3 years already.
Yeah. And, at some point we're going to have a Vance presidency probably. And, just actuarially and given things, we're very likely to have that happen. And, I think that is going to be, how we get there is going to be very problematic, and fraught with peril. And because I think it's we're seeing diminished capacity by Trump. We see lots of indicators of poor health. And you're just not going to have anybody anxious to use the 25th Amendment. I can't see his cabinet being so. I think they're going to delay any kind of sensible handovers that might come out of this. And it sure ain't going to be like the Pope retiring there. And so, I see that as being the thing we haven't quite considered. And when it happens, literally God only knows. But that is something that is I think, we should anticipate it, and one wonders to the extent what policymakers and various other people are anticipating, and how the shadow of a imminent change might impact decision making of various people. Hard to say, but I honestly, I'll be surprised if Trump is still around by the midterms.
Wow, you would be surprised. Oof.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, right? Given all the health problems he has, you know. So maybe it's 50-50, maybe, but that's not a great prognosis for a president. You know,
All
and
right, Dave.
so
Well, let's
yeah.
end on something a little fun. We're going to watch a little clip from our dear friend Jimmy Kimmel here on Trump's response to the verbiage used in the infamous letter that he never uses. So let's see what that's all about.
An interesting statement. It's not the way I speak, and anybody that's covered me for a long time knows that's not my language. Now, we've been covering Donald Trump for what feels like a very, very long time, and in the interest of fairness, we decided to do a bit of research to see maybe he's right. Does he use the words and phrases that are used in that letter? That's not for me to say. It's for you to decide for yourself.
Voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything.
Look what I have. I have everything.
I have everything.
We have everything.
Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is.
Oh, yes, there is.
And I won't tell you what it is.
Yes, there is.
I won't tell you what it is. I won't tell you who it was, but...
Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is.
Nor do I.
Nor did I.
Nor do I. Nor would I. And I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what it is.
Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey.
We have a lot of things in common. I think we have a lot of things in common. Certain things. Things in common. Right, Jeffrey?
Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Come to think of it.
Come to think of it. Come to think of it. Yes, we do.
Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that?
Carson's an enigma. Have you noticed that? Well, you noticed that.
Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you.
As a matter of fact?
As a matter of fact,
It was clear the last time I saw. The last time I saw him was at Mar-a-Lago.
Trump, a pal is a wonderful thing.
He's my friend, my pal. He's my pal. Pal. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. Wonderful, wonderful day. Wonderful thing.
Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. May your dreams come true. May you all have a truly blessed Hanukkah. Let's talk about a big secret. Big secret. Big secret. Incredible secret. Wonderful. Wonderful secrets. Secrets. Our most precious secret. Jeffrey, wherever you may be, Jeffrey, thank you.
Okay, that ending part was silly, where he's just calling out random Jeffries and saying that. But I just love the fact that he says, "I don't even use that type of verbiage." People don't realize the internet lives forever.
Well, and like he wrote it, I mean, like he doesn't have, and I don't, I don't.
I love the guy, Dave, that says, "Well, are you guys going to prosecute this? Because unless someone got a time machine and went back and forged the president's signature, or even if they did forge the president's signature, that's a pretty big deal."
I will say that this has been a thing that has shed a lot of supporters. The things that and there is some evidence that we are seeing people who are in the MAGA universe or in that orbit. There's still plenty of hardcore people who are very
Yeah.
pro-Trump, and there'll be people who I'm speculating about a 79, the oldest president ever, having health problems. That's not vicious. That's just reality.
Mhm.
Okay. And, I'm not wishing for anything bad to happen to the guy. I'm just saying I think it's highly likely. And I think there's been a lot of indicators that his health is poor for natural reasons. It's in God's hands. It should not be in any individual's hands one way or the other, for Trump or
I'm just hoping
anybody.
that it's not, and you know
But
why I'm hoping that it's not a
but
mental health issue.
the thing is, though, that people get old. I mean, my experience with my father. When you get that age, you shouldn't be president. No human being should be stressed with that level at that age. My father, my mother, I've seen these problems, but and so I come at it from that point of view. I see my parents in him in that sense, and so the thing though is the people that are shedding from him. Something that isn't necessarily about that is the Charlie Kirk, right? The Jeffrey Epstein. Going back on this has really pissed a lot of people off. The Charlie Kirk hate thing, right? That ceremony where he said he wouldn't hate. A lot of people have shed, especially people who are Christian, who are identify in that realm, had a lot of trouble with that. And so beyond the farmers and all these other people, we've seen these other things that go more to the issues that made people support Trump. And so he's shedding people there as well. So, he's just poking holes in his coalition every day, it seems. And I don't know how long that holds up. And I think it's going to spell real trouble in the midterm.
Well, you know why I'm not. I'm wishing that it's not a health deterioration or mental health deterioration, because the hardcore people that are defending him are definitely going to use that as an excuse. You know,
As an excuse for what?
all the failure that's ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I mean, I'm just saying that Trump has a huge personal following. No one is going to be happy with
Mhm.
anything bad happening to him. No one is going to be happy with if he becomes incapacitated, like Woodrow Wilson, right? I really wonder, is anyone going to have the guts to bring up the 25th Amendment? Right, to say, hey, he's incapacitated and we need to make JD Vance president. I really think that personal following is going to make that a very dangerous thing for any cabinet member to sign off on. And so I could really see us being in kind of limbo with an incapacitated president. If something naturally occurring with his health were to happen, I'm not, I can really see us being in gridlock over that. Which you could say maybe that's a good thing. You can't, you can't deploy the National Guard at that point. But it could be really dangerous, especially who wields the power, right? Who's in power in the White House and who's behind the throne. That's where things get really shadowy, and no one's going to be happy about that. I
You
mean,
know, it would be,
Republican, Democrat.
it'd be funny. It'd be funny if, well, it wouldn't be funny if something happens to Trump and JD Vance becomes the president and does a whole 180, because we've seen that before. John F. Kennedy gets held as the civil rights president, and he did all that. But if you know history, he wasn't down for the cause. He thought it was a problem. His vice president pushed the issue a lot harder than him. And when John F. Kennedy, I can't remember which meeting it was. It was a big civil rights meeting. He sent Lyndon B. Johnson out of the country during that meeting. And then once, of course, he's sadly assassinated, his vice president takes over. And then that's when the full court press on the civil rights movement actually happens.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think there's a very good chance that there will be a Vance presidency. That 48, is being held
Yeah.
in reserve there, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know when he steps up, and moves into that position, if or when, how he will deal with it. I thought when Trump was elected that he would go into the White House and that he had some basic competence as a businessman. Um, and I said, he has to moderate. He has to get in, and the demands of the job, the gravitas of the, will have a change, will have an impact on him. Couldn't believe that anybody would be immune to that. Um, and I was wrong, right? He was stunningly unaffected by all those things.
Well, no, because he loves cameras and the ability to be interviewed and
Uh,
grandstanding,
I,
so it's fuel for him.
I would just say I think it's objectively clear that he stayed himself. He was unchanged, and he would probably tell you that, right? Jay Vance is a young guy, and he might feel the gravitas of the moment. He will certainly not just at a personal level. He does not have a popular following. He will be beset by enemies, and the people who were the powers behind Trump will not be the power behind JD Vance, and he will need to find friends and build a coalition. So there's this personal aspect of how will he react. There's also just the interest group competition concept of, hey, who is going to be telling him to do what? Where is he going to find support? Who is he going to need for support? And the difference between, one big thing with your Lyndon Johnson comparison, Lyndon Johnson had more power than Kennedy, right? I mean, he had more insider power in Washington than Kennedy. And in a lot of ways, he could do things that Kennedy couldn't do. Like he could force his party to cut its throat in the South on the Civil Rights Amendment. And so he was just, a weird guy. So I don't know what JD Vance's power base. I mean, he certainly isn't got that power base. He was a junior senator. He does not have a strong popular following, and I don't know what the Republican Party will do in the absence of Trump. I think it'll fragment, and there will certainly be a vicious infight that goes on there, and that will change what JD Vance does.
Well, you just told me. I know we're about to end soon. You just told me something about the infighting, and I've asked you this question before, and you've answered it. And I'm gonna say it again until, because I didn't think about this too. I asked you, why is the Republican Party the one that's so easy to take over? If you think about it, back in the day, the racist Jim Crow Democrats flocked to the Republican Party. The Tea Party flocked to the Republican Party. MAGA take over the Republican Party. Why is this party always taken over?
Well, one, it's a party. Let's keep in mind who the other guys are. Okay, it's the Democrats. The Democrats have all. I mean, your uncle, Harold comes on, says Democrats have a problem with the messaging. What was the famous statement? Someone said, "I don't belong to an organized party. I'm a Democrat." Right? They're the original cat herders, right? And Democrats do not. There isn't a party to take over. Would be my one thing. I don't. First of all, I don't know that Republicans are in any way easy to take over. I think, however, there is a party to take over. The Republicans are much more willing to unite around somebody. That's kind of an essence of conservatism, that there should be unity and coherence, and there is a greater willingness to follow a leader and to have hierarchy. On the left, no. Democrats don't like being told what to do. They don't gravitate to leaders. They don't toe the party line. Now, every party has its own people, right? We got Marjorie Taylor Greene on the left, but I would say that, so nothing is a complete one or the other. But I've always said that the problem the Democrats are, they just don't have a good message. They don't have internal discipline. And it's not their jam. It's simply not the way they operate. And so Republican Party has always been better at messaging because they're willing to toe the party line.
Yeah, but
Where Democrats aren't.
those three entities I brought up, I just don't. I guess I don't know if my question. I don't know. I just like if I'm sitting here and I have a group that wants to spew this stuff that's been spewed in the three entities that I brought up. It's like let's flock over here and do it.
I guess the thing about it is that the with Nixon and the Southern strategy, there was a long period of time where they, and I'm talking about when I was a Republican back in the day, right? And you had Reagan and Bush, and you had that thing, and I come from the Wall Street wing, and the folks that were responding to dog whistles were tolerated and were suppressed, and part of what uh, Trump has done has been to bring them to the front and to credit the Joe the plumber guy, right? And to to bring forward a lot of the folks who I think the Republican Party marginalized, even as they were taking advantage of these folks for their votes. And I think that Trump basically gave greater voice to these people because they were marginalized and they weren't really seeing the Republican Party deliver for them. They had more faith in Trump. And I think, a big part of what he has done for the Republican Party is to mobilize parts of their base that Mitt Romney never would have wanted to give the time of day to.
Well, I think that kind of answers my question because we all know Trump was a Democrat, and if you're gonna, again, the people he gravitated to lend a voice to are not the people that you really wanted to hear from in society, which was the same with the Tea Party, and which was the same with the Dixiecrats, if you want to call them. If that's what I can't remember if that's what. Yeah,
The
that they
Tea
were
Party
called.
remember, the Tea Party is this great expansion of maybe that part populist Republicans,
Mhm.
right? Because one way we could say it's this populist view where white identity, and I'm just going to say it's the or American identity that tends to be white, right? Comes in, and the anti-woke folks, the culture wars, all of that stuff, the Tea Party was very big on, although the Tea Party had fractures and different strains, but Trump walks into that. And so, I think we have a two-stage thing. And so now he is able to bring forth people that will vote who otherwise won't vote. when Trump's not on the ballot, just, I don't know, it's got to be millions of people don't vote. And, that's why Democrats kick ass. And also the polls are accurate. That's the other thing that's so fascinating. Polls are accurate, were accurate in the election years when Trump wasn't running. When he came in, your polls and your guesses about a turnout and everything were all over the place, right? So he was he's been a big disruptor for the Republican Party, and that's given him the power to bring them in line. And so, when I say that JD Vance doesn't have that, he doesn't. Nobody has that. No one's ever had that. Maybe since Teddy Roosevelt, and so when that goes away, nobody else picks that up. Right? That's a personal, charismatic thing. And what happens at that point is things are up for grabs, I think. And it'll be interesting to see. We also have things now where we have people actively seeking a third way. We have the Purple Revolution. We have a bunch of Democratic folks who are trying to find a more centrist policy approach, reminiscent of Bill Clinton, the Democratic Leadership Council, which produced the Bill Clinton presidency, and he was a moderate. People forget he was a moderate centrist Democrat who worked on reforming the entitlement system. And, he was anti-left of his party. People don't remember that. And
Well,
so we got a lot going on out there that's boiling under the surface.
yeah. Well, just to let you know, I checked out when you put J.D. Vance and Teddy Roosevelt in the same sentence. Thank you, Dave. You have a good
I put
night.
Trump and Teddy Roosevelt in there.
Oh, that's even worse. Now I think you're suffering from dementia.